You said the world needs power, I won't disagree. There's heat in the ground and the wind runs free. You call nuclear the future, but it won't power itself. Nuclear relies on coal more than coal needs itself. You said crypto was coming and demand would explode, that AI would load what the grid couldn't hold. But SMRs stay delayed, no ground ever breaks, and the public pays out while the promise remakes. You said it's the hour, but the plan's still the same. The technology is analog from the Cold War days. There's no place for the waste, and yuccas refused.
Hello,
Vented
everybody.
dry
Give me
cast
a moment.
containers become the only refuge. You say you lead the charge with a federal hand. Would you vote Price, Anderson, or stand with the land? You call it advanced, but the cycle's well known, still chasing a fuel that should have stayed into stone.
The name of the song is The Enrichment Man, and there's a link in the description to the same site, which is the description link is to James's most recent song, Anti-Nuclear, of course. And he's got a really good job done on that one. It's a rap, female rap. I bet you it really appealed to the teen crowd type young adults club. It's got that really innocent type sound to it, but it's a powerful message. I got to start off with the big CC, climate change. And I got a poll. Is it evil to grow a massive amount of food for sale? You're talking about £1 billion per prefecture. Where's Dana? So we're going to cover some really good stuff here to kick off the show in relationship to a video.
It's near late.
I got asked to join by one of you folks out there, lovely folks. And I jumped in the chat room and I put my phone number in there 3 times. I also left a comment about this show. Come on over to this show and I'll explain what I was putting in the chat room about how nuclear, but we're also going to cover many other facets of that for the first 10 or 15 minutes. So if you're coming from this show, here we go. Hopefully. Things got a tendency to bounce around sometimes with me. Yeah, we'll start off with a farmer who's in Senate. He's asking the people in charge of the climate change policies what percentage of CO2 is in the atmosphere. I'll get my big head out of the way. Get out of there, Dana. Here we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Panelists, let me just go right down the line real fast. What % of our atmosphere is CO2? Take your best guess. You don't have to be accurate.
I'm going to bump it up.
All down the
for you.
line.
Repeat that question.
What % of our atmosphere is CO2, carbon dioxide? Wild guess. It's okay.
I'll buy 5%.
5?
I'll just follow you then.
We'll go 7. That's my favorite number.
I'll see their 5 and suggest that we know that transportation causes 49% of CO2, so that's why we're all working on energy transition.
All right. So what number do you think it is?
5.
5? How about you? I didn't hear you, Mr. Dreyer.
7.
7. Did you have one, Mr. Boyd?
So we got a 5, 7,
This Price is Right.
8. I'm going to
Okay.
get the high end.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, and I don't mean to put you on ice. I ask a lot of people that because all we hear is climate change, CO2, CO2. I heard a couple of you on the panel saying you're looking to change your vehicles to electric, even though we don't have the electric grid. And me as a farmer, I wouldn't be real happy about running out and replacing $300,000, $500,000, $1 million pieces of equipment because someone wants it to be electric. The answer is 0.04%. Not 1%, not a half of a percent. It's 0.04%, and it's gone up from 0.03 over the last couple decades. This is what we're being all contorted into doing, is this tiny change in CO2. If we get below 0.02, plant life starts dying off.
And so it's not even it's 4/100ths of a percent, not 5%, not 7%. Smurfed up here. It gets like that around here sometimes. Now we're going to cover climate change, post Fukushima, and you got to put in 70 years of the nuclear industry on top of that, right? By the way, I'm not here, I'm not there, I'm supposed to be here. Here we go. I'm Dana, and you can call into these live shows 5 days a week when things are going good. I was pretty sick last night and never left the house all day yesterday. Just wasn't feeling good. 709-589-4406. I was out looking for emaciated whales today for about 2 hours. We still haven't got the boat in the water. And we still got another video to play. So before we get to that, I don't need the headphones for the next video. So this is Miles Allen. He's the father of, bring it up on the big screen for you, Net Zero. He's the scumbag, I'm sorry, the professor behind Net Zero, which was jacked by UN and weaponized against humanity. Then you have the father of global warming. What's his face? Brocker. Come on, system. Wallace Brocker is the hockey stick guy. So all of these people gave a single paper and was snatched by UN and weaponized against you. Carbon footprint, you hear carbon constantly now. It's like, if you get pulled over by the police, they ask you why you're speeding, just tell them carbon footprint. How can we, and you'll get off for sure, how can we bring down this was a public relation campaign by BP Oil. And now we're saddled with that because UN jacked that one too. The idea of a personal carbon footprint was popularized by a large advertising campaign of the fossil fuel company BP Oil in 2005. The campaign was intended to divert attention away from the fossil fuel industry and onto the individual consumers, instructing people to calculate their personal footprint and provide ways for people to go on a low carbon diet. Because they were unhappy. They lost all that money and their insurance went up and everything because they're an oil tanker. They were trying to make a profit. They didn't follow the rules. They had an accident and they paid the penalties, which is why you have charters, right? So the companies can be held accountable. And they struck back at us. They carried it, and which was jacked by UN. So the United Nations They had net zero study by, he got a cushy job at Cambridge now. You got Trader Brocker, Wallace Brocker. That paper was jacked by United Nations. There was 4 papers. This was the carbon. Then there was James Hansen's paper. James Hansen worked at NASA. It's just a terrible example of a human. He won the Nobel Prize equivalent in Taiwan when degenerate Michael Schellenberg was in Taiwan promoting nuclear with all that propaganda. He's written books. He's incredibly clever. One of the best we've ever seen propagandists out there for the nuclear industry. He hides himself as all kinds of. I think he's starting to call himself a journalist now or something. James Edward Hansen said that Nance was 99% confident that carbon, the warming was caused by accumulation of greenhouse gases / carbon and not a random fluctuation. Hansen also says nuclear meltdowns emissions, which are actually 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison by the atom. You put 200 million atoms on the head of a needle, you can't see it. And the physical atom pulses energy almost at the speed of light every second, whether it's alphas, gammas, betas, or neutrons. We're going to talk about that coming up too right away. So,
Nuclear energy is harder for people to understand, the idea of radiation. I mean, radiation is natural. The Earth is bombarded by radiation all the time.
Yeah, but we're talking about nuclear. And so the Earth is bombarded by radiation all the time, but that's not why we banned the food in half of Japan by 55 countries for a decade. We done that because it's man-made, and there's no species on the planet with an autoimmune trigger to defend against it. So your body attacks it for the rest of your life with white blood cells and builds a sarcophagus around it. We call it a tumor, right? But because it's pulsing energy at the speed of light every second, it's wrecking chromosomes, DNA, and cells, and your body tries to repair that every second and build a sarcophagus around the source with white blood cells. For every white blood cell, you got to displace a red blood cell. Red blood cells carry oxygen and nutrition. We're getting short of that with all the radioactive fallout bioaccumulated. So the food was banned still by 20 countries. We got stories tonight, like China still has a ban on 10 prefectures, for instance. There's 20 countries with a ban, mostly on 14 prefectures. This is radioactive fallout. You can see what 18 days of fallout at the top of the screen does. And 26 days later, the whole planet is buried in a huge amount of different isotopes. Not just iodine-131 or xenon-133, or we're talking about very long, all of this stuff. Think of an invisible snowstorm covering the planet in 26 days, and instead of being snow, it's radiation atoms, and they pulse energy at the speed of light every second. Imagine this has been going on 90 years. We'll say 80 years, right? But the radium, the Marie Curie, let's ignore that nightmare, radium suppositories. That was a genocide on its own. Radium lipstick, radium soap, radium polish for cars and furniture. Be careful of your antiques. Get a professional with a Geiger counter to check it if you own it.
So the radiation that was released, for example, in 3 Mile Island, that exposed the accident at 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania, exposed residents nearby to radiation, which is equivalent to the amount of radiation that you get by flying in a commercial aircraft across the continent and back.
You're trying not to laugh. It doesn't work that way, right? The radiation is in your body. It's pulsing energy every second for the rest of your life. What he's talking about, he's conflating natural, harmless, stupid, everyday, normal background radiation that everybody's already acclimated to through genetic superior selection. So let's recap that. So climate change, CO2 is not 7% of the atmosphere, but 0.04 of a percent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be electric. The answer is 0.04%.
Which is 4/100ths of a percent. And they were saying they started off with a huge number, 5%. 5%! But anyway, you got Miles Allen wrote a paper, you got Wallace Brocker with a paper, you got degenerate BP oil, and sadistic James Hansen. Yeah, by the way, I didn't finish that statement where he got the equivalent Nobel Peace Prize in Taiwan for promoting nuclear. At the same time, Michael Schellenberg had hung, pretending he was on a hunger strike to get food from the nuclear wasteland on a ballot for Taiwan in 2018. We covered that for 6 days, right? That was just, and they got it on the ballot. 74% of the population voted against it. 2 years later, the ballot ran out. So then they just shook hands, the Prime Minister of Taiwan and Japan, and imported the food. No more referendums after that one. Get sick and die. Hansen's testimony, 15-minute testimony, was pivotal and marked the beginning of the official global warming policy debate. There is no debate, by the way. So you had Miles Allen wrote a single paper. Wallace Brocker wrote a single paper. We had a big campaign by BP Oil, and we had a 15-minute presentation by human trash James Hansen. And those 4 papers are being used by UN, which is a military-industrial complex, according to Eisenhower, and is the New World Order, according to George Bush Sr. Let me play that little clip. And the concept of the New World Order, UN was the League of Nations pre-Hiroshima Nagasaki. After Hiroshima Nagasaki, they had a light go off in their head saying, oh, crap, we're in the nuclear age. We need to unite. So then instead of League of Nations, become United Nations. Here we go. But this is, because it's 195 militaries. That's what UN is. I apologize for playing this video. I know a lot of people don't like this creature, and you'd be right. Just got to adjust the volume on that puppy.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
So UN is, by proxy, according to George W. Bush, the New World Order, right? All right, here we go. One massive container ship equals 50 million cars. So they burn a very noxic, they burn leftover from the production of raw oil, crude oil. So they're only about 7 or 8% efficient on top of that. They're very big, nasty particles. They're supposed to be put in a storage for thousands of years till they decay naturally, because they're concentrated, right? And instead they cooked up this law where they allowed these big tankers to so-called burn this stuff without no consensus. So the world's 15 biggest ships create more pollution than all the cars on the planet combined. At this time, it was 760 million cars, 15 the world's biggest ships. There's 90,000 of these ships on the ocean at any given time, which is the animosity equivalent of a little over 4 trillion people on the planet every day. I'm still breathing the air. I can still drink the water. The water's a little too clear now because we killed the phytoplankton with the perpetual radioactive fallout. This model is the French government. It's not a model, it's a study of 1 million and 10 million atoms of cesium-137 per cubic meter of air after 23 days. And so it's got an invisible snowstorm covering the entire planet. And this is just cesium, which pulses energy 600 feet every second. Now, because you got, which is a gamma, by the way, cesium-137, you got alphas and neutrons and betas. And when they all pulse energy is not the speed of light, but it's close to it. This is incredible, right? You're talking about, you put 200 million atoms on the head of a needle, you can't see it. And each one of them will pulse energy 600 feet, and that'll wreck your chromosomes, your DNA, your cells every second, or birds, or animals, or mammals, or whatever. It's not a game, right? This is real. This technology shouldn't exist. It's the wrong technology, and it should never come. Like they declare, the doctors back in the 50s called it a biological weapon. The radioactive fallout, right? And if you go back, look at it's really interesting when you look at the history, because you'll find it all over YouTube, the old videos of radioactive shelters. And the idea is down in the ground where it's more difficult for the energy to pulse through the ground. But because it never goes away, it's never going to be safe. But they lull you into a complacency with those videos. And so when you got gammas, alphas, neutrons, and betas pulsing energy at the speed of light, when they hit each other, they don't mesh. They don't pass through each other. They ricochet. So you got one almost at the speed of light and the other one almost at the speed of light. That's energy. That's heat. That can't just escape because it's nuclear and you don't understand it. That's real. That's happening. It's been happening for 80 years. There's 1,000 fuel pools creating plumes like this every day, and you can't see it or smell it or hear it or feel it or taste it or touch it or pick it up or throw rocks at it or perceive it. But it gets assimilated into everything. It bioaccumulates, particularly post-Fukushima. Let's keep going. So Fukushima was 4 reactors melting down at the one time, but they had another issue where they had all the fuel pools that particular design. There's 70 reactors in the United States with the same design, where the fuel is kept at the top of the buildings in what they call pools. There's 2 pools at the top of each of the buildings. And there's estimated to be 8 reactor cores at the top of each of the buildings. So by the way, this picture's on the 15th. There's 4 reactors melted down in a row. They're much bigger than Chernobyl. Chernobyl was a graphite reactor, was a small reactor. These are huge reactors. And they're pure uranium, pure plutonium. Reactor 3 was a plutonium mixed oxide reactor. This has caused some serious consequences on our planet, as you'll see. This was a plutonium dispersal based on 20 days. And plutonium kills all the animals in all the experiments with 3 different tumors. The majority of them, the animals that die will die of bone tumors and liver tumors and lung tumors. They'll typically have all 3 tumors if they live for several years. Humans are 50 times less efficient at their kidneys at filtering out the radiation compared to an animal kidney. So you're 50 times more susceptible. You can't filter it all, but you can filter some out typically. But animals really 50 times more efficient. They all died. This was the Neptunium-239 dispersal based on 20 days from TEPCO's numbers. So it's a visible snowstorm of neptunium, which decays to plutonium in 2.5 days. So instead of using this one as because this is the decay after 20 days, but just the sky is still full. So the sky is full of cesium, it's full of plutonium, it's full of neptunium. reactors actually blew up and caught fire and blew up, meltdown. Not necessarily in that order, but in less than a couple of days, they were done ducks. So this is what they looked like originally. There wasn't a nuclear scientist, academic, nuclear student on the planet that looked at that and said the fuel pools were intact in the reactor, but they all kept their pie holes shut, every one of them. They're very coordinated, and you'll see that in some of the presentations where they all laugh on cue. The only example I can show you is the nuclear industry of that particular heinousness. So this is reactor 2 and 3 and 4, reactor 3, reactor 4. Now reactor 4 officially didn't melt down, this didn't happen, so I'm a lawyer. But I got the pictures from TEPCO website, and you can too. Reactor 3 and reactor 4 no longer exist. These were 19 stories, 190 foot, 65 meter buildings. So they left the stumps there. They used the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society. Immigrants don't speak the language. They do physical work, but most of it was remote control cranes, but they sacrificed thousands of victims of society. This is typically the industry. They put these contraptions over it. And if you zoom in on it, if you're a nosy little old dude like me, look at the debris left right here. So allegedly at the top of the building, everything is hunky-dory and so officially at the top of the building, here's some of the media pretending. This is, they all done it, not all of them obviously, but the ones that didn't do it promoted these narratives. So these CNN, ABC Australia, Cecilia Vega, BBC Rupert Winfield Hayes, CBS Seth Dorn, all of them pretending they're 150 feet above the stump of reactor 4. And all the media universities came out and promoted this narrative. Particularly people like Arnie Gunnarsson, Helen Caldercott, Christopher Busby. Man, they sold humanity out, I'll tell you what. I mean, they picked up 30 million one-ton bags in 14 prefectures. The food was banned by 55 countries in those prefectures. The U.S. government says the radioactive material from the reactor is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. So imagine a plume covering the entire planet for 80 years, pulsing energy almost at the speed of light. So it wrecks, because Fukushima was a pulse event, you lost so much inventories. You lost roughly 36 reactor cores. There was 8 reactor cores at the top of each of the building, and they don't have a repository anywhere. So that's where they're keeping the fuel. It takes a long time before it's in a position where they can put it in a dry cast. There was stuff in a dry cast, but each of these reactors, by the way, typically use 1 million gallons of water, 4,500 tons of water. It's 4,500 one-ton pickup trucks with 1,000 liters a minute has to be dumped on top of this. 70 a second. 70 one-ton pickup trucks with 1,000 liters in the back of each of the one-ton pickup trucks have to be dumped just to cool the reactors when they're running under normal conditions. Each reactor is 1.45 million one-ton pickup trucks of water every 24 hours. So it runs on external power. It has 2 gas, oil, coal plants dedicated to it to build these incredibly difficult, time-consuming, resource-intensive sites. And so imagine you got 6 reactors. Each of them needs 1.45 million, 1,450,000 one-ton pickup trucks of water a minute to boil water to power 1 million homes. That's released back into the environment. But that pales in comparison of the emissions from the fuel pools. We'll do this every day. An invisible snowstorm. So instead of snow, it's radioactive fallout particles. But it looks just like a snowstorm from the ocean floor to the top of the atmosphere. It's pulsing energy every second for millions of years, almost at the speed. Like when they hit each other, so you got gammas, alphas, neutrons, and betas. When they hit each other, they change direction. That's known as an X-ray. So all the species in the forest and the meadows, worldwide, post-Fukushima in particular, because you lost 36 massive reactor cores, including plutonium mixed oxide reactor cores. And per gram, you're talking about 37 billion times 88 per gram of radioactive isotope fallout. So that plume doesn't really do it justice. If you can see radiation right now, you wouldn't be able to see your hand, right? My Geiger counter is only measuring lightly, and that's an expensive one, that's gamma. It's measuring cesium, basically, right? Iodines. It's measuring a gamma isotope. It's not going to be very efficient at that, but it's incredible numbers we're looking at right there in the studio. So this stuff lands in your forests, your meadows, and Fukushima was a pulse event. And what we mean by that is now you saturated, and we have the numbers are incredible. 220 million atoms just of iodine-129, for instance, per liter rainfall in Canada, United States. This is a 15 million year half-life. We have all kinds of studies. I showed you quite a few already. And what happens is this stuff is in the ground. It kills the bacteria, it kills the fungus. If you take that out of the equation, because the roots of the plants and trees and everything need bacteria and fungus, and so does the ecosystem to function. It needs fungus and bacteria specifically so it can soak up water. And what I mean by that is the fungus and the bacteria makes up the ecosystem, so all the biota that breaks down the foliage and the litter, right, all these microscopic animals, can't exist without the fungus and the bacteria, which binds it all together basically because it's everywhere in that environment, in that cold, damp, dark environment, that breaks down the foliage and the litter. Millions of little microscopic creatures per handful is probably billions. And what happened was the radiation is pulsing energy at the speed of light, right? In increments over 80 years, it destroyed the integrity of their health and everything now. Fukushima was a pulse event that wiped them out. And what happened then, we knew this was going to happen, we predicted it way back, was that the rain wouldn't soak up into the ground no more. So obviously they're going to have serious flash floods. And there was no question because all the studies and models were predictions covering the entire planet. Now, gas and coal emissions don't make plumes like that, by the way, or even the top one. They don't travel very far. And wherever they land, they grow food and trees and plants and humans and puppies and everything else. But this stuff wipes out the bacteria, the fungus, which takes out the biota, which takes out the essence of the trees and plants and everything. That's why they're so tender dry. That's why the ground is so tender dry. So I'll walk up to an ant nest and just jam my hand down there. It still exists 5 years later, but it's very rare to have any ants into it whatsoever, let alone a healthy nest, because the ground is too dry. So it heats up. And another adverse effect of this is that when you get lightning strikes in this tender dry forest now, you get the huge chunks of foliage and litter that didn't get broken down by the biota because the bacteria and the fungus was wiped out by the radioactive fallout. And that'll, when it catches fire, because it's tender dry, it'll travel 1,000 feet. This huge fire, and it'll set down. And so this causes the forest fire to expand rapidly. And with a bit of wind, because this stuff is dry, it'll burn even better. And when it lands, you have a huge fire started right there. And everything is tender dry. And then any kind of rain that comes along doesn't put the fire out like you would expect, like pre-Fukushima would, because you have flash floods. And now you've seen flash floods the last number of years, just almost constantly. Right, we can quantify all of these assertions. So then, in the ocean itself, what happened to the ocean was it wiped out the phytoplankton. They're the bases of the food chain, the oxygen chain, carbon sequestration chain. They're at the surface. And they're 50% of your oxygen, 50+% of your oxygen right there in the giant Pacific, the biggest ocean. And so now the system is no longer functional because you're, now this was covered, the whole ocean was covered the same as the planet in less than 30 days. But it's a continuous plume covering the entire planet. And we have the documentations where they absolutely acknowledge, typically they only acknowledge cesium. If you go to the official sites, you're going to get absurd propaganda. Unless you're early in the game like we were, right? I'll bring it all together for you here now. So let me do this again. This model is based on 16 days of 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air, cesium-137, covering the entire planet by the time this model stops, which I think was 16 days. So think of an invisible snowstorm, a radioactive fallout, and each atom is pulsing energy at the speed of light for millions of years. It doesn't matter what it is. And by the way, the biggest byproduct of the radioactive fuel rod is the curium isotopes. Hence the word, the reason we call a nuclear meltdown a curium. And curium isotopes with a 250,000-year half-life need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium. And so officially, you'll go to the sites and the propaganda machines will tell you that the longer the isotope, they'll conflate natural stuff with man-made stuff. And they'll say, you know, uranium-238 got a 4 billion year lifespan, say, for instance, right? And then they'll conflate it and say, and that's why curium or plutonium is not bad, because it has a long half-life, but it has no energy. But that's simply not true. The man-made anthropogenic isotopes that come out of a nuclear reactor and meltdowns and fuel pools, your fuel pools are full of reactor cores, 40 years of reactor cores, and you might change parts of the reactor core every 12, 14 months. So they're full of reactor cores after 4 decades or so. And they're still splitting atoms as they normally would to boil water for millions of homes, except they're released directly into the environment, pulsing energy every second, getting assimilated and everything. But they sterilize everything too. Now we got got one more part to get to. So recently, this was the last 2 die-off shows we done. Emaciated killer whale, one in New Zealand, one in Belgium. And you can see the peanut head, the shoulder blades, the rib cages. If you look at my presentation, you get different angles. New Zealand kind of refused to acknowledge that it was emaciated in most stories, but in the major media. But there was one candid moment where one of the medias interviewed one of the main investigators, and he said, well, the animal is not very healthy. It obviously didn't eat for a while. No. This is severe emaciation. I don't know how anybody wouldn't recognize it. Maybe they won't.
The answer is 0.04%. Not 1%, not a half of a percent. It's 0.04%, and it's gone up from 0.03 over the last couple decades. This is what we're being all contorted into doing, is this tiny change in CO2. If we get below 0.02, plant life starts dying off. The answer is 0.04%.
Oh, sorry. So it's 0.04%. Some of them said it was 7%. In fact, they're the people that were in charge, right? Let me go back to this one.
I'll bite 5%.
5?
So he's asking, what percentage do they think of CO2 in the atmosphere? The first guy, 5%. They're in charge.
I'll just follow you then.
We'll go 7. That's my favorite number.
I'll see their 5 and suggest that we know that transportation causes 49% of CO2.
They're
so
not even
that's why we're all
embarrassed.
working on energy transition.
All right.
That's nice of her. It's 7% when it's actually 0.04%. They're in charge. They're in charge. Okay. So move ahead 14 years. Gray whale die-off feared as starving whales are migrating north. This was a couple of months ago. Thousands of whales, gray whales in particular, but all the whales have the same attribute, unfortunately. North from Baja, California, are in such poor shape and have so few calves. You're talking about last year they were emaciated, headed south. No babies by the time they got there. This year they got 80 babies heading north, 12,000 miles again. And of course they're still emaciated. There was a lot of emaciated dead whales in the nursery in Baja, California. Never seen that before. The last 52% of the gray whale population post-Fukushima, actually since 2016. Even worse again, because we broke the food chain, right? And now, in 2 years, there will only be about 200 or 300 left, because they were emaciated 12,000 miles last year. Now they're in such poor shape, thousands of them. And, like, you can't have half the whales are emaciated and the other half are healthy. Okay, it doesn't work like that. They're either all healthy or they're all emaciated. it can't be half and half because they're talking in the thousands. The whales we're seeing are extremely emaciated. In fact, even from the shoreline, right? They can see their rib cage sticking out, even from the shoreline. Okay, so I explained it.
You know, it's nearly.
And I want a lot of things. I don't get them. I want a new motor, so I can be looking for whales, but I haven't got one. I got to try to fix the one I got. NBL live presentation. So I left all kinds of comments in their chat room and my phone number. I left a comment on the video that I was going to do a presentation on how nuclear affects it, because they were asking, they were begging for someone to give them some more insight, and so I done it. So if you like, folks, please get in there and remind those people that watched the beginning of Dana's show, because they didn't call me, I didn't expect them to, but I saw through my end of the deal. Okay, so we got a nuclear show to get through tonight. It's a great show. Hope you hang around. We got a little bit more to cover on this subject, by the way we're at. How scientists discovered 7,000 humpbacks on top of an unusual mortality event. They're also all severely emaciated. We covered the majority of these die-offs. And they were predicting it in 2014. The whales would have 1,000 atoms per kilogram of just cesium-137. How does a whale or any animal only get cesium-137? How does that work? Where's the science behind that one? They're full of every other 1,000 other isotopes. That's why they're showing up emaciated everywhere. There's food out there. Not lots, but there's food out there. So why are they showing up severely emaciated? Because they got leukemia, stupid. Explosions of sea lion deaths in Peru amid the deadly bird flu. So they were conflating the dead bird. Some of these pictures are going to be hard to look at because they're emaciated. Here we go. So then they show you this picture. And I'm like what are you doing? Because they're talking about 3,400 sea lions dying of bird flu. That's not bird flu. That animal should be 600 or 700 pounds. It takes a long time to get down to a skeleton. And the next one they show you is really difficult to look at, but you need to. So they're trying to say this is bird flu. Bird flu causes a neurological disease that messes with the nervous system. They're all fidgety and weird. And it happens over 3 or 4 days, right? It's instant. This takes months and months to go from almost 1,000 pounds to 80 or 90. And I was a commercial diver for over a decade. I dove with sea lions all the time. And I probably dumped my weight belt at least, I won't say 300 times, but close to 300 times. I couldn't control my fear. And so I'm very familiar with what a sea lion should look like. No illusions. I have a lot of nightmares, but no illusions about what a sea lion actually looks like. So they're not, emaciation is not caused by bird flu, but that's exactly what the big media, including worldwide, was conflating, was comparing when I left the chat, they were blaming the die-offs on ships from Asia and China. Well, there's 90,000 ships on the ocean. 15 of them, the big ships, right? Container ships. 15 of them produce more pollution than all the cars on the planet. There's 90,000 out there at any given time, and there's another 20,000 in the pipe being built, which is equal to 4 trillion people a day in pollution. Now, they were asking sincere questions, so I ended up there, and I gave them a sincere response. I got ignored, which is typical because they had a lot of comments. Comments were moving pretty quick, right? I left a comment on the video, and it fulfilled. So U.S. biologists probed the death of 70 emaciated gray whales. 2019. So clearly this severe emaciation, now all of the migratory whales are emaciated, like the gray whales. And as we covered extensively They have unusual mortality events for all the species, literally. But we've covered extremes, like where 10,000 or more can be. Because we found 1,000, like they found 1,000 cold-water beak whales back in 2017, 2018 in the United Kingdom, where they don't belong on different stages of decomposition. So they assume, because that's 10%, they call that 10%. Whatever they find is considered 10% of what died. So that was 10,000. Cold-water beak whales, deep diving whales, feeding on squid and typically around that size, right? All right, here comes the show for tonight. That only took 45 minutes. But because I left the comments, that just because the people were doing interviews there, they might not read it or might not see it, but the people in the chat room might see it, and that's another perspective for them. I strongly encourage people to get over there and promote that facet of my video, because we tell the story, but we don't really promote ourselves per se, right? We're here to go to war with the people that are paying attention to the nuclear industry, which is, I'm censored heavily, and so ignore that. Japan's Environment Ministry announced Tuesday that Lake Inawashiro in Fukushima Prefecture, northeastern Japan, over toward Niigata, the Ishikawa Prefecture site, has been newly designated as internationally important wetland. That's insane, because you're in a nuclear wasteland where they picked up 30 million one-ton bags of radioactive fallout at 100,000 atoms per kilogram of just gamma. They won't acknowledge betas or alphas or neutrons ever in any circumstances. And that's straddling the cities over, both of those communities we know are incredibly, particularly Koriyama and Azu is incredibly radioactive wastelands. And Koriyama, this is a stopover for the migratory geese, I think, or swans, highly valued for attracting many tundra swans to overwinter in a nuclear wasteland. And so they're getting certain conference of contracting parties of the Ramsar Convention in Zimbabwe. It's a nuclear wasteland. So eventually, though, these swans won't be able to lay eggs because they're in a nuclear wasteland. That water is incredibly like when you see a mountain, because like the mountains have never been, you can't do nothing with it. There's an absurd amount of radiation in the mountains. Like the amount that was lost, it was around 6 million pounds per building. Not counting common spent fuel pool. And if you go back to my videos, my presentations to the anniversary this year, March 11th anniversary, I've done a whole week and a half or something anniversary videos. One of them was 736 mysterious pictures. They were released in 2021 on the 10th year anniversary, not the anniversary, but the 10th year. Mystery pictures from a drone, high quality. And when you zoomed in, the common spent fuel pool was also redacted, and so was reactor 6 and reactor 1, 2, 3, and 4. But why was the common spent fuel pool redacted? It's right across the street, by the way, from reactor 4. The tsunami ran right through that one, too. And it's a shorter building. It's not 190 feet tall. Let me keep going here. And so, like, one of the problems, we really wanted to have, like, a talk show where we wanted to have, like, guests coming on the show, where I was originally years ago going to reach out to all kinds of guests. But the problem became we couldn't find anybody that was honest. You were going to get into a fight with lots of them, per se, because they might have been sincere, but they were going to regurgitate the propaganda. Because there's a lot of sincere people out there, but they're indoctrinated. And you can't have a conversation with them, right? They're so indoctrinated. They're incapable of, like, you won't hear a nuclear expert come in and say, let's have a debate with me, right? Because their narrative that they use on everybody else can't work here. We got the documentation, we'll bring it to the screen, and then during a really awkward position, right? I'm not going to tolerate someone lying to my viewers. They're just not going to tolerate it. Right? Not even in the comment section. I'm not going to put up with it for a second. I work really hard to have an honest platform. My platform is built on being honest, provide the documentation, and for my assertions, right? As I just done for 45 minutes for the climate change per se, which is easily, like, there's natural fluctuations over hundreds of millions of years. Of course there is, right? Planet's been hotter many times before. But what's going on right now is a post-Fukushima effect. When you look at the pre-Fukushima and the post-Fukushima climate debacle, so to speak, then the post-Fukushima, this is what all the climate craziness started, right? It was an acceleration just because it was a pulse event of 36 reactor cores. Each of them were the equivalent of 100 Chernobyls. Because Chernobyl was a graphite reactor. It wasn't a pure uranium plutonium. It was a brand new reactor. It was a small reactor. Japan's delimiting recycling contaminated soil from Fukushima. That came out yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. And I read it this morning with my coffee. I don't drink coffee, by the way. I drink tea. I don't drink much tea either. Japan's except for right now. So I'll put my foot in my mouth first. I don't drink much tea. Here I am with a tea. I got tea here because it helps to cut my throat. Because when there's two people talking, your throat gets a break when you're doing all the talking. Japan's delimiting recycling contaminated. I'll just hide my face here. Japan's delimiting recycling contaminated soil. 30 million one-ton bags. Somehow are now 16 million bags disappeared. 60 million one-ton bags is 2 rows of traffic right around the entire planet, bumper to bumper, one-ton trucks. It's a little hard to make something like that disappear, but they did. So now they're saying there's only 14 million one-ton bags. I should bring up the documentation for that, I suppose, because otherwise I'm a liar. You're a liar. You didn't show us. Why didn't he show us? He always shows the information. Why didn't he do it this time? Because he's a liar. My detractors are perpetual cowards. This is really interesting stuff, too. We'll come right back to your story. Hang on. I'm going to make it easier for myself. It's 2016. Plane passed a parcel with Fukushima. 30 million tons of radioactive waste, and the bags, they're talking about bags, right? So 30 million one-ton bags. Was stored at, by the way, in 2019, 3 years later, was 105,000 storage sites, and this wasn't one of them. Right, look at that, right? Because you put that headline there, and it sounds like that, but that's not what's going on. It's one-ton bags. Like even in this Al Jazeera story, it was 30 million. In fact, Al Jazeera says, let's just let Al Jazeera say it, because otherwise I'm influencing. It's too bad we don't have other people interviewing me. Get this word out. Because the truth doesn't matter, right? Or a lot of people don't like me because I just bring too many facts. It scares the shit out of people.
There's about 60 million tons of contaminated soil that's being...
60 million. I'll turn it up.
There's about 60 million tons of contaminated soil that's being stored, planned to be stored, outside the Fukushima Daiichi perimeter fence. So
I got to fix that, man. So sometimes my headphones will go down and there's a power cord down at the bottom of my desk, right? And I'm like an idiot. I start yanking on it. It's got to go out and float over outside and come up over it. Because we'll be, one of these points I'm going to yank on that too hard and I'm going to lose my power. Well, I don't know if I'll lose the power over there, but somewhere. Because all my beak equipment is plugged in to $200 isolators. They look like equalizers where you plug into the back of them. They isolate you from background noises, right? Like heaters or fans and stuff like that. I got a fan going, so it's a bit louder here tonight. So Al Jazeera says 60 million. They had 105,000 sites. But back then, Al Jazeera said 30 million. And in 2016, in August, 30 million. Now we have much more evidence than that. I'm just trying to make a point. Japan's dilemma in recycling contaminated soil from Fukushima. So the 30 million one-ton bags, that's what we're talking about. Like, why would you pick each per kilogram? You're talking about at least 100,000 atoms. These are absurd numbers, by the way. And you're talking about 1,000 kilograms in each of the bags, 2,200 pounds, because they're metric, right? Now, the bags have to be replaced every 3 years, by the way. Like, no matter how you try to spin this story, it doesn't work. You can't get away from the fact of how enormous this issue. This was only 3% of the prefecture, and the food was banned in 14 prefectures by 55 countries for over a decade. There's still 20 countries. There's no reason to remove the restrictions. It's insane to remove the restrictions. Rice fields that have been planted shine orange as the setting sun reflects off them in Kitakata City, Fukushima Prefecture. Kitakata is kind of in the center of your screen. To reduce radiation. This is 2025, so the radiation is permeated into sidewalks and streets and trees and bushes and wood and fences. And it's assimilated in all the water is treated worldwide. And we don't have an autoimmune trigger to defend against it, right? Our immune system becomes compromised, and we become more susceptible to pathogens and viruses that were normally harmless and innocuous and benign, are now catastrophic to your health. So there's heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome, schizophrenia. Ask your hairdresser next time you go out. Every time you go out from here on and then get a haircut, go somewhere else, and ask them, have you seen a lot of Alzheimer's, dementia in your older clients? And they're like, we were just talking about that. It's not just older, it's young people, babies. In Australia, babies got dementia. Wrap your mind around that statement. Because they've removed restrictions on food from the nuclear wasteland a long time ago, right? The first studies they're going to do, by the way, after a nuclear accident are autism and Down syndrome. What does that tell you? If you're pro-nuclear researchers, it's easy money, right? And they get big payday to go out and do the dirty work for the nuclear industry because they need to know. They want to know. They studied anthropogenic man-made radiation more than the stuff from the solar system. What does that tell you? Across Japan's northern Fukushima region, authorities, that's the scariest word you can ever hear is, hi, we're from the government, we're here to help you. Just start running right away. Don't even look over your shoulder to see who it was, run. Authorities scraped a layer of contaminated soil from the swaths of land. What are you talking about? That's not how you clean up radiation. Some of this was millions of atoms per kilogram, by the way. Like each of those 30 million one-ton bags, each bag is a great big dirty bomb. Pre-Fukushima could easily contaminate a community, no problem at all, by spreading it out over the community. Like Japan, they can't get rid of the sewage, it's too radioactive. They can't get rid of the sediment from the water filtration facilities, it's too radioactive. They can't get rid of the garbage, they burn it, but it's too radioactive. They can't get rid of the ash from the incinerators, which is only about 10% of the radiation that was in the material that was incinerated, because it's too radioactive. When you can't get rid of the sediment from the water filtration facilities, and it's accumulating at like 50,000 one-ton bags a year, like for Tokyo, for instance, with 36 million people, metropolitan on Tokyo. You should have banned, all the pipes are incredibly radioactive. Everybody's shower head is incredibly radioactive. If you took a Geiger counter and put it on shower heads in Japan, the Geiger counter would say, run, 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 rabbit. Scraping a layer of soil is like having a crow fly over a forest fire and piss on it. It's just, it's not going to, never going to make it to the fire. And so the talking about 3% of the farmland in the communities in the Fukushima Prefecture is where they dug up the homeless and destitute, the victims of society, immigrants who don't speak the language, dug up 30 million one-ton bags. They spent $28 billion doing that, right? I think it was 29 billion. It was almost 30 billion, so somewhere in that number. So scraping a layer in your power spray, this is not how you clean up after a nuclear accident. Scraping up some topsoil, 3% of the land, and where you wanted the farmers to come back and grow food in a nuclear wasteland, surrounded by mountains that are incredibly saturated with absurd repositories of radioactive fallout from Japan. It's still melting down. Huge inventories were lost originally, but there's still reactors melting down, hemorrhaging into the environment. You can't contain this. It's a demon. Now as young farmers who don't know anything about nuclear, don't know anything, young, and you know the other words that goes with that, right? Seek to bring life back to the region once known for its delicious fruit. Seek to bring life back to a nuclear wasteland. Where like only 15% of Okuma, I think that's where that particular story is from, is considered you're allowed to hang out until you're not outdoors too much now, man. You're not allowed to cross the street or something of your house. You can't clean up. That's not how you mitigate radiation. Radiation doesn't just. It's pulsing. Say gamma, like cesium, pulses 600 feet every second. So if I go into a sewage, well, I guess sewage is not a good word. If I go into a very toxic area and I dig out a little section, I put fresh soil there, and power wash your house, do you really think it's safe to go back? And this is nuclear. Even a single atom in your body, ultimately you'll end up, if you live long enough, you'll end up with a tumor from it because your body attacks it for the rest of your life with white blood cells. And it's always pulsing energy at the speed of light, so it's wrecking your chromosomes, your DNA, and your cells. Your body tries to repair that every second. It's a problem, man. And we got 80 years of emissions. So when you talk about nuclear waste, the last thing we're going to say is that the nuclear waste is splitting atoms. They'll just say we don't have a repository. What do you need a repository? Well, because it's nuclear waste. But yeah, but what makes it dangerous? Well, because it's hot. And when you tell you that, hot means it's splitting atoms. So, like, your reactor a typical reactor core boiling water for 1 million homes and businesses, quite the neat trick. But it needs a gas, oil, and coal plant, 2 of them, in order to power the reactor because it needs 4,500 one-ton pickup trucks of water every minute. Imagine 4,500 one-ton pickup trucks driving past your front door every minute, 1,440 minutes a day. Imagine 1.45 million one-ton pickup trucks driving past your door every day at the rate of 70 a second. How much energy do we need to pull that trick off? And so imagine you have 6 reactors with the exact same attributes. Oh, too much. People don't appreciate it. And a single atom can trigger an autoimmune in any species, let alone humans. And, the problem with it when it gets into particularly small, like baby birds and baby animals, baby mammals, baby fish and babies and everything else, is that, and kids and whatever, a lot of it will aggregate in their thyroid glands and their bones. So they're producing radioactive hormones for the rest of their lives, all the species and humans, and they're producing radioactive stem cells as they're developing. How do you think that's going to play out over a few generations? They're going to stop reproducing, right? That's why we call it an extinction event right now. But it plays out in slow motions, and it's well on its way. And all the whales, there's not lots of food, but there's food out there. So why are all the species showing up emaciated? Because they have the bioaccumulation of radiation, they have leukemia. They're producing more white blood cells than red blood cells. So they're not able to uptake nutrition. And they don't feel like eating, right? They're cancer victims. They're radiation victims. Like using radiation in the hospital doesn't make any sense with a 3% survival rate. Why would you do that? So how long does it take, if you got 100 patients, and you're the nurse, how long before you get desensitized when 97 of them are worse off than they were before they came in because you gave them radiation? How long does it take you to get desensitized? Not very long. Because a human will switch off in times of great sadness like that. Topsoil was collected part of the large-scale decontamination effort. It also included blasting buildings and roads with high-pressure jets of water. It's absurd they would even say that all these years later. Like, they should be ashamed. The industry should be ashamed to say something like that. Like, this wasn't like a forest fire where you had a lot of, ash falling in the community, for instance. You want to clean it up. This is radiation, man. You can't destroy it, even burning it in incinerators at 3,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. You're just going to liberate it back into the environment until it finds a victim, bacteria or fungus or insect or animal or mammal or human or tree or plant or pollen. Like Japan, pollen is 4,000 parts per cubic meter of air of radioactive pollen, which was the same as the early morning fog and dew. But you're not seeing, and that's another thing, like you're not seeing the morning, now a lot of places you won't see morning dew, which would revitalize the whole ecosystem with all this water in the morning, right? And all the plants that would give them a little boost to get through a dry day, right? We're not seeing that anymore because we got rid of the foundation, like I explained in the first part of the video, right? Where you got rid of the bacteria and the fungus from the radioactive fallout. That takes out the biota, which breaks down the foliage and the litter. The cycle of life itself. And then we kill the phytoplankton in the ocean right away. Bases the food chain, the oxygen chain, the carbon sequestering chain. Including blasting buildings and roads with high-pressure jets of water. Like if I had a contaminated site and this is what they were going to do, I'd fire them right away. I'd say, well, you don't know what you're doing. Let's bring in all the nuclear students, and then they're all going to change their majors. They're not going to a nuclear wasteland. There was 2,000 nuclear students and alumni in Taiwan after Fukushima. Each day, we're online spamming the internet with propaganda. So how many other countries were doing the same thing, I wonder? But it's acknowledged that in Taiwan, the entire academic nuclear university institutions, which was pretty big at that time. And they were challenging people. Oh, no, it's like a banana and a potato chip and walking in sunshine and calling you fear-mongering people that had legitimate concerns. Many evacuees have been reluctant to return because they're worried about the radiation. So you don't even have a functional media on the planet. That's not an accident. We used to have a functional media quite a while ago. But now we don't. Now the big corporations have bought up all the media. We don't see any dissenting voices whatsoever. I mean, people will invoke Jimmy Dorn or Joe Rogan. These are terrible sources. Jimmy's a good guy, don't get me wrong. He's trying the best he can, but he's caught up in his own gig, right? Like, first off, and I'm not disparaging them. I'm just saying they don't know nothing about radiation. And so they're going to follow the typical propaganda line because that's what you see with people. And I got quite a few clips of Joe doing it, right? There's no concept of it, and that's not hard to understand, see? The industry hasn't made it easy for people to understand it. That's why we do what we do. So yeah, this story came out yesterday. This one came out today. Fruits of Fukushima. And he's in Okuma, this guy, if I remember correctly. And I think we covered this guy before, but this is what the industry does. It takes stuff like this. 5 kilometers from multiple nuclear ongoing meltdowns in the town of Okuma, he can actually see, and he's up on the hill, so if he gets to the other side of the hill there, he can probably see the nuclear meltdown from where he's to. But he's completely incapable of curing or trying to understand it, because otherwise you wouldn't be in a nuclear wasteland. Why would you be in a nuclear wasteland? Or you can't see it or smell it. Does that mean it's safe? Some people it does, apparently. So he's a company hoping to revitalize agricultural by growing fruit 5 kilometers from the ongoing, and they call it striking. These are clearly massive nuclear meltdowns. These are not. This is not up for debate. It's not opinion, right? It's not a conjecture or something like that. These are massive reactors still melting down, and will for thousands of years probably. So that building doesn't look like this. It actually looks like that. And so people go out and look, well, Dana, I see in reactor 4, CVC said Dorn, the senator's son, Dana, was in there. So you're a liar. My detractors always got the worst ad hominem attacks on me, don't they? He's short, and you won't see him here, but you'll see him out on other sites attacking me constantly over the years, particularly when we're out doing the research, which is the missing piece of part of that puzzle from tonight. We better do that. So all that stuff it showed you at the first 45 minutes is actually backed up by research, extensive research expeditions. So we spent 6 years from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, to Alaska. They were difficult times. Now, the reason we done 6 years is because what we found, we had to go back to see if it recovered. The buildings really did melt down. The radioactive fallout is incredibly documented. Spiked. So this is not an opinion or a conjecture. It's spiked. This is a study, a documentation rather, for the French government, the IRS and French government, at 1 million to 10 million times a cesium-137 pre-Fukushima levels. So imagine that's a snowstorm coming out of Japan. This is based on 31 days. This is a snowstorm at 10 days. This is a snowstorm at 20 days now. That's 20 days of snowstorm. Covers the entire planet. All the studies from all the institutions and shakers and movers and governments worldwide show me the same attribute. This is 1 million, 10 million times cesium-137 per cubic meter of air. And what that means is that every species on the planet is getting a full body X-ray every day since Fukushima and for at least 300 years, 290, give or take 10, 20. So here's what we discovered on the research expeditions. The species, so normally I should never be able to get my Zodiac on a beach because there'd be a bunch of holes in it, right? But because we had all this radioactive fallout, and I went back for 5 more years after the first year. The species to your left are exterminated. And the whole world kind of noticed this phenomenon that was paying attention, but all the species to your left are exterminated. So I went back for 5 more years to see if the species recovered. This is what I looked like 5 years ago. I'm very healthy. I was like that my whole life, look. And I was out there on the ocean for 6 years getting pummeled by radioactive fallout. Obesity rates doubled in Japan. They're at 70% in the United States now because of radioactive fallout and importation of food from the nuclear wasteland in Japan. And in Canada, it's almost 90%. Because what happens, weight gain after a nuclear crisis is a marker of radioactive brain damage. or it's the effect of your brain getting incredibly radioactive poison to your pituitary gland. It's supplied by your thyroid, right? So the species to your left, I went back for 5 more years to see if the species recovered. It's an extinction event. There was one recognition from the industry. They still refuse to acknowledge it, by the way, despite the fact they got 6 years of research expeditions, 4 to 5 months a year on the ocean. And I was attacked online the entire time I was out there. Even now, you look up my name, right, and people are saying the most horrifying things. Not people, but the public relation firms. They say the most horrible things about me. I'm actually a good person. I work really hard every single day. I've been at it for 23 years. Bodies are swollen by cancerous tumors. And the cancer spreads from one species to another like a virus. And the scientists, is beyond surprising, I dare say, that the species are jumping to each other, and that's why the species are missing on the right, is because the cancer is jumping from species to species on your left, and now it looks like the right. That's the official statement. But officially, they won't even acknowledge that all the species to your left are gone. They still refuse to acknowledge it. I've done 6 years of research expeditions. I can't deny it. I can't switch that off. I can't pretend that never happened. And there's 27,000 islands. I took my time and meandered up there 4 to 5 months a year, and there could be no mistaking. My research is impeccable. So here we go again. Fruits of Fukushima. A short drive from the Fukushima nuclear disaster site. A short drive, 5 kilometers. I don't really think he's 5 kilometers away, to tell you the truth. I don't think he's smart enough to be that far. Which is not, like, only 15% of that town is considered habitable. But if you ask someone like me, I'll show you the documentation that I can guarantee you there's nowhere in that town is safe. Novice farmer. He's not just a novice. He don't know nothing. He's no background in it whatsoever. Tends to his kiwi because he's getting money to go there and money to start up a business. Samplings under the spring sunshine, bringing life back to a former no-go zone. Where did all the life go? Anybody want to ask that question? Former no-go zone. It's still a no-go zone. 85% of the site is a no-go zone, the community. He was 11 years old when the earthquake struck and the tsunami, and the wall of water crashed in Fukushima, causing a devastating meltdowns. There was 36 reactor cores, 8 in the double fuel pools at the top of each of the 4 reactor sites. That's where they store and they're no different than an active reactor core. They're gone through a chain reaction. They're splitting atoms. And so when you release these fine particulates, the particulates are splitting atoms worldwide. We're in real trouble. And nobody wants to have a conversation. And when you look at the censorship on me, it's really something. 19 viewers, bless your hearts. 16 likes, like, really? That's all I got? 16 votes, that's all I got on my hard work that I've been doing. This live show for over a decade straight, typically 5 days a week. And that's the best I can glean out of this. Let's go over to MLB. I'm jealous.
You know, it's nearly...
Let's look at how many thumbs up they got. They got 198 thumbs up. They got 1,000 views. I don't think I got a single video with 1,000 views. I'm pretty sure they're going to get more. My comment is still there. I will cover it. And I did. It took me 45 minutes. Oh, now they got 200. Oh. I don't give a shit. Just kidding. And I bet you if they have me on their show, that's all they're going to get is like 17 likes. Industry will lose its mind if I get on anybody's show, I think. I think my narrative, because I provided documentation for my assertions, should be heard. So now the intentions is, now we finally got communications with the university, but I guess we're takes 3 days or something, business days, before they get back to you. So they finally got back to me. Now hopefully we can get into university lecture halls and start doing presentations the same as tonight. If there's good internet connection, we'll live stream it. Well, my phone will bring, it's got 150 gigabytes of, like a gigabyte a second, so I can wireless off my machine. I'm pretty sure. We make the whole country uninhabitable. Well, it did. Just because you can't smell it or perceive it doesn't mean it's not there, not hurting you, not destroying your health and your integrity and your genetics and your chromosomes, your DNA, because I can assure you. Hey, look, no insect bites on your plants. When you see no insect bites on your plants, it's time to worry. But now, age 25, they sure do look good, though, when there's no insects around, right? They look so pretty. Okuma said he believes in the future of the Fukushima region. So let's put him, who don't know nothing, but is gullible enough to go into a nuclear wasteland, grow food which is going to hurt people. Let's put him up in the media. Over and over and over, these are the people he chose. Everyone knows about the nuclear accident, but not many knows about this area and how it's moving forward. And so there's a total disconnect from reality when you make a statement like that. Everyone knows about the nuclear accident. Well, if you know about the nuclear accident, what frig are you doing there? Do you think you're Spider-Man or the Hulk or something? Do you think you're invincible? Do you think you're like the Wolverine? Or radiation can't hurt you? You're special? Wouldn't surprise me, actually. By growing kiwis, fruits, I want people to take an interest in and learn about what Fukushima is really like these days. It'll be a nuclear wasteland for at least 1 million years. And you're a serial killer, but you don't know it. You're growing food that ultimately kills people. You're a special kind of idiot. The region of Fukushima is renowned for its delicious radioactive fruit, pears and peaches, but the nuclear disaster led many people in Japan to shun product grown there. If they're smart, they don't shun it, they just don't even consider it. 14 years later, following extensive decontamination work, like the reactors are still melting down. Even if you could successfully mitigate it, which you can't. Right, you ran into homeless people just for the plant. Where are you going to get the extra homeless people to... Like, picking up 1-ton bags of topsoil is not mitigating radiation at all. In any sense or shape of the word. You're talking about 3% of a little area. It's like going to the car wash and washing 4 spots on your car, one on each side about this big, one on your front hood about that big, and one on the back of your car about that big, and the rest of the car stays dirty. That's what you're basically doing, right? And so it won't take long for those little spots to get dirty again because they're surrounded by dirt. Including stripping an entire layer of soil from the farmland. That's not what they did. Most of the soil was flipped over. Right? It wasn't even removed for the farmlands. Authorities, what do you mean authorities? Name them. Says the food from Fukushima is safe. See, you can't quantify those assertions by just saying it. And that the people that we've covered over the years that are making these assertions are just insidious pro-nuclear degenerate apologists. Any academic with any integrity is never going to be interviewed. Stripping an entire layer of soil from the farmland. Again, this is madness to suggest that is a way to mitigate radioactive, a massive, unprecedented nuclear event that covered the entire planet, for goodness sakes. So imagine how bad it is 5 kilometers away from a nuclear wasteland. It's still melting down. It's been abandoned for 13 years. And that the people that moved there, out of the 1,500 that are there, 1,000 of them have never lived there. And the majority of them are probably working at the nuclear disease factory next door. And last year's peaches were sold at London Harrods department store. It was like $100 for 3 of them at one of the United Kingdom's most expensive malls, I guess you call them, right? Department stores / mall. While in Japan, some consumers now chose to buy the region product to support struggling farmers. But the farmers should be shot on sight. They're growing food in a nuclear wasteland that is going to destroy the health of millions of people, hundreds of millions a year. Each prefecture has grown about 1 billion pounds of rice. Fukushima in particular does grow 1.2 billion pounds of rice, plus all kinds of other foods. They never stopped growing it there. They just lied about the results. I've done entire presentations just on that. Hours of documentation, hours and hours of documentation I've already. To support struggling farmers, you should have snipers up on the hills shooting at a farmer. It's a nuclear wasteland. You can't grow food in a nuclear wasteland. It's murder. And in this capacity, it's a genocide. And Fukushima is an omnicide worldwide. The safety has been proven, really. Says some kid who's getting paid to live there and paid to have a farm there. And so if it was proven, you wouldn't need to justify it over and over and over either. Starting from zero, he was studying software engineering at a university, but dreaming of becoming a fruit farmer. Well, he's definitely a fruit now that will murder, unfortunately, thousands of people by growing food right alongside ongoing nuclear meltdowns. Look how beautiful the plants are. No insect chewing away at them. Gee, I wonder why not. And met residents trying to bring back kiwi farming in an effort to rebuild their community. Why would you want to rebuild a community in a nuclear wasteland? Some people believe, like the gullible will say, well, Hiroshima and Nagasaki are not nuclear wastelands, or they wouldn't have rebuilt them in a nuclear wasteland. It's like, your logic is not logic. They built the communities, the cities, Nagasaki, Hiroshima, right back in the nuclear bomb crater. Look up my anniversary of Nagasaki, Hiroshima presentations, where we show you the academic studies of the hideous illnesses and diseases, not immune deficiencies, injuries, and illnesses from the radioactive fallout. I met residents trying to bring back kiwi farmers in an effort to rebuild their community. So the media takes people like this and just blows it as if it's the best thing that ever happened, blows completely out of proportion to the reality. Showing you pictures doesn't make it. After disaster fallout, nuclear fallout forced all of the Okuma's 11,000 victims to flee their homes. All of them. So the whole community left, and they've been gone away ever since. And so they put incentives there. If you go there and you stay there for a couple of years, they'll give you X amount of thousands of dollars. And so there's quite a few morons that will buy into that, right? Who are incapable. I shouldn't call them morons, but are incapable of rationalizing that they're in danger. They just believe the propaganda, which is a problem, right? And it's not illegal to trick you with radiation. It's not illegal to poison you with radiation. Congress and Parliament don't have the authority to make it illegal to poison you with radiation. Yeah, that's right. James done a song about this guy here. Oh, James got another song up there. Elemental Kiwi. Just play that song. That's a great idea. Thanks, Dana. Was that a transition? That's not supposed to be a transition, is it? That was supposed to be. Hang on, I gotta fix that. There you go. There you go. That's back to normal. Says James Luce's site. James has over 340 anti-nuclear songs. Elemental Kiwi. We're going to play that song. I'm going to adjust the volume for you. And so if you want to go over and listen to it with my interference, no one's going to blame you.
I was 11 when Fukushima hit. So long ago, can't recall a bit. Heard the claims, forgot the rest. Now I'm a Gen Z Kiwi farmer, just downwind from the ongoing meltdowns, tending saplings like it's normal under the spring sunshine. They say the cores are mostly stable, the rest will take a few more centuries. My field was stripped, the soil approved, declared safe to return, and called it all a healing zone. Oh, elemental kiwis, sweet from the no-go zone. Oh, elemental kiwis, meets all accepted international standards. They say the stigma's mostly over, the fruit's intact, the trust delayed. I plant my kiwis where it's quiet and smile like something's been repaid. They say the soil meets all the limits, the beck rolls on too high. The kiwis grow and then pick up what's left. Oh, elemental kiwis, sweet from no-go zone. Oh, elemental kiwis, meets all accepted international
That was awesome. That's got a great feel to it, James. She's got a new song out too for tonight. Look at that. Sweet. Hang on. I'll be right there. I'm trying my best. Oh, elemental kiwi. Now I got another song on my freaking brain, which is actually good. Another tune I can't get out of my head now till tomorrow sometime probably. I got another tune there for tonight first. Is it evil to grow a massive amount of food for sale in Japan's Fukushima deadly nuclear radioactive wasteland? I ran out of digits, so sue me. There's 16 votes. That's all I still got 16 votes after all that work, all that time, all that energy, all that effort. What a cruel world. I got 12 people on my show. Woohoo! killing it tonight. Probably got more than that. Probably got 13 people, but they got me censored, right? I don't care about censorship. The video will be here for people to watch. Documentation will be there. It'll be undeniable. As usual. Let's keep her going here. Yeah, serious cramps in my stomach yesterday. Holy crap. I was about the way how the day went too, by the way. And we got to look for whales today, and we got to get the boat up and running, Zodiac up and running. I don't know. Got to be careful what I'm doing here, right? I'm in communications with the university, and I want to rent out a lecture facility so we can get in and bring the fight to the nuclear industry. I'm tired of being censored. And so let's get out in the universities where they're putting the propaganda and challenge their narratives, right? Let's stir up that hornet's nest, because there's no hornets out in my garden or anybody else's garden around here. They're wiped out by Fukushima. Since then, the stricken nuclear plant have been stabilized. Yeah, really? Really? Stabilized, you say? Does that building to your left look like it's ever going to be stabilized? It's a nuclear meltdown. You can't do nothing. You can't go there. Your organs will melt in a few minutes. Sections of Okuma, previously a no-go zone, were declared safe for residents to start to return in 2019. Safe by who, though? By the same monsters who lied about every facet of the story so far? Oh, that's right. Sections. Yeah, 15%. Like, when 15% of a nuclear wasteland they're trying to tell you is safe, is that because they don't want to go there themselves? Young outsiders like Haraguchi are moving there, taking advantage of government subsidies. And around 1,500 people live in Okuma. More than 1,000 have never lived there before, including hundreds, 700 or 800, who work at the disease factory, Fukushima. But also in agriculture, man. You shouldn't be working in agriculture in a nuclear wasteland. And that's not rocket science. That's just, hopefully, you would pray that was common sense. Clearly, it's not common sense. And even tech startups, just because they're good coding don't mean that they have any thinking skills. Like radiation tests today, dozens of sensors monitor radiation levels in the nuclear wasteland. Sure, at Fukushima City, they had 3,000 Geiger counters that were set into microsieverts. Not even counts per minute, which is what anything should be, is counts per minute. Why would you do microsieverts? Because counts per minute is physical atoms that you're going to breathe in, you're going to drink it or eat it. Microsieverts is just energy. It's like microsieverts is pulse of energy almost at the speed of light, which is the becquerel each second. But that's not what you want to do, is to fit how many atoms. So when you do counts per minute, you're getting how many pulses of energy you're getting per minute. And so now you get a better handle on the contamination levels. And it's only going to pick up gamma. It's not going to pick up alphas, neutrons, and betas, or X-rays. So that's a huge issue. And as usual, a lot of these stories, if you try to challenge every lie, you end up with a show like tonight where some parts, such as unused hillsides, that's such a strange way to frame it, right? Unused. No, it's a nuclear wasteland. It remains off limit. It's off limit because it's a nuclear wasteland. So why put the word unused in there? How does that, such as hillsides remain off limit, is how we should say, but why would you put the word unused there, right, in that context? Why would you frame that narrative like that? Some parts, such as unused hillsides, remain off limit. Well, such as nuclear radioactive wasteland hillsides. It's very deceptive what they've done there. putting the word unused there. Unused hillsides remain off limit. See, that doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't even roll off the tongue properly. Unused brains. Soil tests showed a slightly elevated level of radiation that meets the international accepted food standards, which is by the military-industrial complex, UN, or UNSCLEAR, or ERPA, the IPRC. They're all UN, right? They're all the same people on each panel, too, by the way. So on his farm, they showed slightly elevated levels, really. Why don't you tell us how slightly those numbers are in the nuclear wasteland? But right alongside of ongoing nuclear meltdowns, where you're definitely being hit with neutrons. Accepted food standards, there is no safe levels. A single atom, an anthropogenic man-made atom, in the body of any species or human is attacked for the rest of their lives by white blood cells. So there's an instant cause and effect going on here. And so there's permanent harm because now you have less red blood cells and you have more white blood cells. You have less oxygen and nutrition. So as your body accumulates more and more, because this stuff sequesters, electrically charges, sequesters in your muscles, your organs, your bones, and your thyroids. It goes in your thyroid and in your bones, your mutated hormones and mutated stem cells for your bones. How do you think that's going to play out over a couple of generations? Or even a couple of years? Who leads the nonprofit citizen science group Mother Radiation Lab. These people are nuts, eh? They're in a nuclear wasteland, and they're going around looking for acceptable level, what they call acceptable levels of food. Instead of getting out of the nuclear wasteland, because there is no acceptable levels, the International Atomic Energy Agency standards is based on health effects. There is no on good health effects. It's based on natural stuff, like potassium. It's not based on uranium, plutonium. It's just, the whole story is insane as you start to weave through and pick amongst it. And when you try to challenge every lie in a story each day, don't be surprised if you don't get to the rest of your stories, because there's so many lies you can't keep up with it. Among other activities, our group conducts its own radiation test on soil and food to help residents who are choosing local products to consume. Incentive to stay there, but they don't know what they're doing. They don't have the help that they're getting is completely dishonest, typical, right? Disingenuous. The Travel International share a story that the region hopes his work could eventually ease concerns. Well, for the Fukushima, what do you mean? Well, that's the worst thing that can happen is ease the concerns. It's a nuclear wasteland. That'll never change. And that he was committed to transparency. I would imagine the editor added that. I don't think the kid had the foresight or the fortitude, the courage to say a lie like that. There is no transparency. You're right alongside, you're in Okuma, you can't deny it. But because the people that he's targeting are people that he thinks can see through all the, what they're going to call propaganda. We need to sell our products to people who understand. No, have you ever heard that attribute from a farmer before? That they're growing kiwi fruits 5 kilometers from a nuclear meltdown. So they need people to understand that they're growing food in a nuclear wasteland less than 5 kilometers from ongoing multiple nuclear meltdowns. This is the worst nuclear accident in human history, and the community has been abandoned, literally abandoned, for 12 straight years, almost 13 years. And the people that moved back there were the vulnerable people of society, the complacent people of society, not people that had any concept or insight into the nuclear industry. These were completely vulnerable to the propaganda. And Congress and Parliament worldwide don't have the authority to make it illegal to poison you with radiation. So there. Oh, elemental kiwi. It's got such a great ring to it. All right, that's it for Dana. We still got a song, though. James got a brand new song here tonight. We're going to play that here in a moment. I just got to get myself organized. So now I got a show ready to do before I normally have a show ready to do because I didn't catch up on my last show because there was too much. Because I'm a sucker for punishment. And we didn't get very far down the rabbit hole tonight because I switched gears. It's good to do that once in a while, though, right? Like we covered the double C, the propaganda from UN, which anytime I talk about UN and disparage UN, I get censored heavily, man. Like, so I got 17 likes. Really? That's it? I still only got 16 votes on my poll. Such an evil industry, eh? All right. Let's get back over to here. I know James got a new song out. We're going to enjoy that here right now. We'll see everybody on the next show. Hopefully tomorrow night. We'll see. I think summer finally showed up down here. We're at 90 degrees today. No birds. There's supposed to be 46 million birds migrating through here right now. And nothing out there whatsoever. There's no excrement even on the cliffs where they should be raising their fledglings. They've been missing for a couple of years, right? But you still got to go do the research. Driving over on the bike all over these little nooks and crannies, these little communities trying to find whales. I got the drone with me every day. If I can find whales, I'll send a drone there because you know he's going to be emaciated. That's a good drone. It'll be good pictures. So I go to these public areas, and if I see people there, it looks like they've been there a while. I'll ask them if they've seen any whales. And one person told me her boyfriend seen a whale. He told me he did. I tried to find a whale. It was moving down the coastline. And so I'm not going to do that no more. It's just too much work. I gave it a good try, though. Have a great night, great day tomorrow. Thanks for everybody. Take care now.
At Westing Core, we believe the atom belongs to everyone. That's why we bring power where it's needed and where it's not. Every home needs Westing Core. From cul-de-sacs to civic centers, our microcore units fit neatly behind libraries, under schools, or wherever zoning laws look the other way. You can be sure if it's Westing Core. With help from Google Cloud, we've trained Hive to streamline deployment and optimize containment. Emotionally, Bertha, our automated build assistant, knows how to learn, and better yet, how to forget. Some say nuclear is complicated. We say it's just a matter of messaging. Each Westing Core site comes equipped with soft fencing, gentle signage, and community briefings preloaded by AI. We can build it. We can scale it. We can secure your future. Because powering people is what we've always done. And now we do it with less friction. The time has come to Westing Core.
that was a story of Seeking Alpha. So if you go over to his video, don't forget to give James a thumbs up. And check out the story. Seeking Alpha is a real degenerate media, by the way. 10 large nuclear. And yeah, we'll have to get to that story hopefully tomorrow night. Have a great night. Hugs for everybody. Wish everybody on the next show.